only teaspoons compared to the rest of the world. So it's a very small scale, but we're growing rapidly. So even if we keep at about 5% for the next 5 years to 10 years, we're looking at some serious numbers as far as India is concerned. Now there are two very clear segments as far as the industry is concerned. One is what is the domestic industry, that is all the wine that is produced and made in India and sold as well as exported. And the other is obviously the imported segment, which is all the wine that comes from around the world into India. Fine Wines and More, which is my company, is dealing only in the imported wines space. We import from 8 countries, 4 of the old world and 4 of the new world. And we've been in business for 4 years now. And obviously, as the industry is growing, we've also evolved quite a bit. So these are the two clear segments as far as the industry is concerned. Every state has a very different liquor law. I'm sure you guys are aware of this. Even today we have Gujarat, which is a dry state. But every state has a different excise policy, which makes it very, very challenging. I can be here all day and tell you about the challenges of this business, but maybe it's a good idea to talk about the opportunities. I mean, that's why we're here, because it's a growing trend and we're excited about it. And I think eventually we will overcome the challenges that we face. But I'm going to leave this open for question answers and make it interactive, like I said, so it's more relevant. Okay? All yours. Ask away. Yes.
You just gave an example how India accepted coffee, but that coffee doesn't fall in the category of prohibited liquors. As in, if you're talking about wine, there are many factors such as religion or culture that will prohibit people in accepting wine as a complementary drink with food or something like that. How do you consider it as an opportunity?
I think it's a very valid observation in terms of the category, but in terms of acceptance, because wine has almost got this perception that it's a healthier form of alcohol, the acceptance is better and has been faster than anything else in the liquor segment. So I think that's been a big advantage. The perception that the world looks at wine as a good for your heart beverage. I think that has really played a big part. That's one. The second is women seem to be driving this trend in a very big way. So I think that's helping for sure. Traditionally, we never saw women getting together over a glass of whiskey. But today, it's very common to see, especially in the metros, very common to see women saying, okay, how about we get together to have a glass of wine. So it's very okay and accepted to hold a glass of wine and be photographed. Whereas before, we would always, especially the darker spirits or even the white spirits, we would just dilute them and have them with some combination, some soda or something. So I think wine is a little bit different when it comes to that alcoholic beverage segment. I think wine has a much better acceptance than the rest. But it is something that is a factor. But I think the domestic wine market is pushing this so much. The marketing is rampant that I think people have been sort of left with no choice to sit back and say, okay, no, I definitely want to try it because it's there, because it's available, because it's accessible. So I think that's why the trend has been much faster than the other beverages.
Are you targeting people who consider wine as a health drink? I don't think 50-40% of Indian communities would consider wine as a health drink.
I think, the lifestyle has changed so much. I mean, today if you look at all the gyms that have come everywhere, the spas that have come in every city, I mean, big or small, we're talking about A towns and B towns. I think wine has followed a similar trend. It has not been something that has been difficult to it's not that, it's been forced down somebody's throat and said, okay, you have to do this. It has more come from the society. So it's a reverse, it's a pull rather than a push in the market. Yes?
What was the export segment of wine? How is the export business?
Export, in 2001, there were about 5 vineyards or wineries in India, and mostly focused in the Maharashtra belt. Today, there are 48 vineyards and wineries. Indian consumption is at about 1.25 million cases per year. These 48 guys, roughly 50 guys, are making about 10 times those volumes. So obviously export is a very big and a very exciting area of interest for the domestic wineries. In terms of numbers, their total production and what is being exported, I would plug it at about close to 15 to 20% of what they are making is exported. But there are clear leaders in that space. You know, people like Sula and Grover and Indaj who've been here for the last 15 years have started exporting in the last 5 years. And I think the way they marketed it was very focused. They targeted the Indian outlets, the Indian restaurants abroad, in the bigger towns like London and New York. And I think that has sort of helped them pave the way.
Do we have
I'm sorry, this question, just one second.
Ma'am, you said you get import wine from four old world countries and four new world. Then how do you differentiate your company with Brinko, because they also have a very good portfolio in terms of importing wines. So like how do you differentiate yourself?
See, Brinko has traditionally been a spirits importer. They were more in the whiskey, vodka, single malts and beer in that space. It was Aman Dhal, as a matter of fact, who's of my generation. He started the wine business because he had a personal interest, and obviously they had a very strong logistics network set up already, distribution network. So they started about 10 years. So that gives them a clear advantage of being the first movers. They are today the #1 in the country. Brinko is definitely out there as far as import numbers are concerned. And in terms of the portfolio comparison between theirs and ours, we have deliberately done a lot of research and gone for something that we feel the Indian consumer wants, that's one. There were clear gaps in this portfolio that we've taken. So this has been a very thought out, well-planned positioning that we've taken, because like anything, when there's a hype, it's a bandwagon. Everybody jumps on it. So there's so many importers, and just like there are domestic winemakers, there are so many importers that have taken over. Obviously, everyone's not going to survive. Like anything, it's a bubble. So I think the serious ones who've done a well thought out strategy, long term, deep pockets. I mean, there's a big joke in the wine industry that if you want to make $1 million, you start with $5 million. So I mean, that's the reality of the whole thing. That is a long term play. Sustenance is very important.
And ma'am, how do you take care of the competition you face from companies like Diageo, because they are also diversifying now into wines? For example, they bought in Rely. So how do you take care of that?
See, that's a very, very good question. Basically for us, the positioning is more direct to consumer. Because of my direct marketing background, because that's really the group's strength, we have our marketing strategies completely geared towards direct to consumer. So while all of these guys, the Diageos and the Brinkos, they're taking care of the institutional space, which is the hotels and the restaurants, and we are in there as well.
Which is volume business.
Yeah, which is volume business, and you need to be in it because obviously it's about building a brand. But we've taken the direct to consumer approach, which has really helped us because we have a proprietary database across 72 cities in India. We've done continuous research, and we still do it. Every 6 months there's a survey that goes out to our database. We do a lot of events, on-ground events, because this really helps to determine what it is that the consumer is looking for. Till we sort of zero in on that, it's going to be very difficult to, because it's one thing to have wonderful products that you believe in. I mean, there are so many people who are experts on wine. There is no such thing as an expert on wine. But they're self-claimed experts. And they say, okay, this is a fantastic wine, this costs so much, and let's bring it into India. They don't realize the challenges we have here. You're looking at a 10 rupee wine bottle becoming 1,000 rupees. So obviously, it's not that easy. So if you've got the premium segment, all of a sudden something that you brought in for, even you think it's 100 rupees, if it goes to the market at 10,000 rupees, the acceptability just falls flat. So all of a sudden you've got so much stock sitting in the pots, and there's another misconception that wines can be aged, and there's a very long shelf life, which is completely not true. There are wines that are made specifically for young consumption. They have to be, drunk in a certain period. After that, they become vinegar. So, wine oxidizes. The temperatures here are a big challenge. I'm sure you guys have read about that as well. So I think there's, like I said earlier, the whole bubble is about to burst. It's already started. Last year was a very depressing year for a lot of people because the hospitality business fell flat because of what happened in Mumbai. And obviously, Mumbai drives the trend. Mumbai and Delhi are the highest selling wine cities in the country. So I think it's a reality check that all of us needed to go through. So we have. Our portfolio is more geared towards there. It's not completely volume. So, for example, if an Ilaya has come up, or if you've got Four Seasons, which is a UB product, which is again, they're making wines for 150 rupees. And I'm in the space where my wine sells for 1,000 rupees. So obviously there's a lot of disparity there. But like I said, our focus is direct to consumer, and we see that the trend is slow, but it's very, very rewarding. Yes.
So approximately how much revenue do you spend to pump? How much revenue do you pump in creation of this channel? maybe the next step is always expensive. When in terms of alcohol, I belong to the same industry. I have 3 years of experience in the same industry. So I see a lot of money getting into it. How much revenue approximately you spend?
See, when you compare traditional marketing and advertising to direct marketing, it's night and day. Direct marketing is probably the only science where you can measure your return on investment by the penny. Whereas with mass advertising, it's very hard to determine what your return is. So I think compared to the mass advertising and the spend, like you correctly said, for brand building, having a brand equity or marketing efforts, what we do as in Fine Wines and More is probably 5% of what the rest of the industry does. And again, this has been well planned and well thought out because, like you said, and actually you see a backlash. A lot of the big guys who came in, whether it's LVMH or even Diageo, Diageo has gone through a whole reshuffle in the last year. So there's a correction that has happened already.
I was a part of it.
You were a part of it, okay, I'm sorry about that. No, I'm sure experience helps you do other things. I mean, it's not, I think any experience in life is handy, especially if you're planning to stay in the industry. It's good to go through the bad as well because then you're ready for the good.
Wine has always been associated with the elite and the niche class. So are marketers not trying to target the middle and the lower middle class, say upper middle class, which forms the majority of the Indian population? So why is not that very much?
Well, as a company, we are definitely focused on the aspirational class. We are. And I think there are other people who are doing that as well. I mean, if you look at the world trends in terms of wine consumption, and if you look at two countries that are non-traditional, just like we are, the UK and the US. If you look at where the volumes are coming to that country, yes, you have the high-end people, like you said, the elite class, and they're looking for a good Chateau bottle and they want to spend that kind of money. But if you look at where the volume consumption is coming from, it's it's the middle class, the aspirational, the working class, the professionals. So I think for sure India is following that trend as well. And actually we're seeing it even in smaller cities. I mean, we had a launch last year in Lucknow. And when my national sales manager told me about doing a launch in Lucknow, I said, who's going to buy wine in Lucknow? That to imported wine. Obviously, he knew better. And a year later, we're very happy that we're in that space. It's really so. I think India, because internet is a big factor, we do read a lot. The average Indian reads way more than anybody else in the world. We know that. So I think that these things definitely help. The curiosity level is definitely peaked, and the rest is up to I guess, the winemakers, people like us, to make sure that the message gets out in the correct fashion.
To what extent do you see Indian food complementing? Because a lot of places where wine is part of the menu, it has complementary food items also. To what extent have you been able to see some of that percolating to the consumers? Where they're able to make a connect between let's say a chole bhature and some sort of a wine which goes together, or something which is traditional. What I mean.
See, earlier what we talked about that wine and food is a pairing that one must look at because traditionally that's wine is an accompaniment to food, right? But there are so many wines out there, and there are so many wine cocktails that don't necessarily have to be had with food. We find that there are wines that are made for Indian food. There's no question about it. Whether they're made in India or they come from other countries. There are people who are very much focused on the spice factor and make wines that cater to that type of cuisine. But I think in India, at least for the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to see a trend where it's more like an aperitif. So it's before, because we are traditionally used to that. Right. We always have alcohol first and then we go on for our meal. So I think that we're going to see for quite a bit, and it's going to be a very gradual. So I think this whole hype about food and wine have to go together, and let's see if it pairs well and balances. I mean, there's too much sort of mystery around wine, which I think people really focus on denuding the whole experience. It's going to be more fun too, because there's no such thing as everybody has their own palate, and it's about following those senses. It's not to be guided by somebody's. Yeah, you can always say, somebody says this is a nice bottle, try it. Sure, keep an open mind, try it. But at the end, it's your taste and your palate that's going to dictate what you like and what you don't like. Just like with food and the variety of cuisine that we have in India, I think we are in that sense a really fantastic country to have as many wines as possible because we have such a variance in our food. Yes.
Ma'am, I have actually 2 interrelated questions.
Okay.
The first one is, apart from the elite class who are consuming wine, there's a huge section of youngsters who consume alcohol. But then we are seeing youngsters going for wine. What they usually prefer is a beer because it's more affordable compared to wine. and that's what is easily available in happy hours and so. Apart from that, they prefer whiskey and vodka, but less consumption of wine. So what do you usually do for targeting such kind of audience? My second question is, wine is also considered more in India as a female drink, as a feminine drink. So what about the male section which dominates the alcohol part? Because in India, as compared to women, male are more consumer of alcohol. So if wine is targeted as a
You'll be surprised.
yeah. So what about those class, who want, like, guys who they won't even prefer, because thinking that it has been targeted for women and it's something which women have, so they don't feel that, that doesn't boost their ego for having alcohol.
Okay, I'll answer the first part first.
Okay.
The age factor.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right that the youngsters are still not, looking at
Wine as-
something that they enjoy or they get a kick out of. But the same youngsters, 5 years from now, because of the lifestyle that we have, are going to be wine drinkers. And they will be faster wine drinkers than, your dad or your granddad, because again, it goes back to the lifestyle that we have. Especially in the bigger cities, we have such a fast-paced life and we have such stressful lives. The commute is hard, the work is hard, everything is, So I think wine is something that automatically relaxes you. It's not a beverage that can be rushed. It needs time. So it's not a beer that you can just swig down and you're on your way. So absolutely you're right about that. But when you're slowing down your pace of life, you will look at wines. So the reason I said, we're looking at a 5 to 10 year market. This generation is the one that's going to be driving the real volume trend as far as India is concerned. So yes, but we are seeing already a change. I mean, it's not that we have to wait for the 5 years, but yeah, in terms of numbers for sure. But we're seeing it already. Like a lot of events we do, I see that the shift is happening much faster in the last 2 years. We see a lot of 25 to 35-year-olds now coming for our events. Maybe they're first-time wine drinkers, they're curious, or they just want to, feel like they've arrived in life, because there is that, perception that holding a glass of wine means it's a statement that you've done well and you've arrived in life. Going to your second question about men versus women. Women have always been closet drinkers. Okay? And this is a fact. Statistically proven as far as India is concerned. Right? So I think, the fact that women are driving this trend, I think is wonderful. And as far as men are concerned, they like to have that appeal that I can talk about wines. They may not, but just because they're talking about it, they are compelled to hold that one glass and then talk about it. Because if you're holding beer and then you want to talk about wine, people are going to be like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. But you're holding a glass of wine and you can sort of show off your knowledge a little bit. So I think that's where men, and again, men love to even about single malts or even about beer. Somebody say, have you tried a Hoegaarden? Because it comes from Belgium and it's a fantastic beer. So, don't talk about Foster's and don't talk about Corona. So I think it's, in India we are definitely a very open-minded society, for one. We always have been. And like I said, the rest is up to, the people who are in the business and how the message is driven. Because I do believe that it is not like the rest of the spirits. It's not an alcohol that is meant to give you a high. So if you're in it for the kick, forget it, drop it. It's just really a journey, it's an experience that you dictate at your pace. Nobody else can dictate it for you. So I think that it's really the consumer that's going to give the strength, and I think that's going to come. Did I answer both your questions?
Sort of.
Okay. You didn't hear what you wanted to know. Yes.
Ma'am, I was just talking about wine. As from personal experience, don't you think like the people who try to create an awareness, they just try to make it very complex? For example, if you go for a tasting session, they may talk about, you can smell some gooseberries, cherries, and plums and cranberries, but I don't see cranberries all the way here in India. So how do people perceive it? Because I see it as a very complex kind of emotion. Everybody must understand. I may taste it because I belong to the same industry, but what about a layman? How do we get it? How do we perceive it?
I completely agree. 100%. I think the exposure is important, because obviously unless we're exposed, we're not going to be able to try something. But I think overexposure is very dangerous, where you're actually going to make the person run away because he's so overwhelmed with the information that has come. It's like, God, I feel like I'm going to school. Who wants to? I don't even enjoy this experience. And you're absolutely right. So I think this whole flooding of wine knowledge is quite unnecessary, and it's really about whether you're going to accept it or not. And it's like, how we're picky about perfumes, colognes. Whether men or women, we know what we want. How do we do that? Obviously, you squirt a little bit and you smell it, and it's either you or it's not you. It's the same exact thing with wines. You cannot be dictated by somebody else's taste. It is your palate that's going to drive it. You may, sip a little, hold a glass because you've been sort of forced to do it, but eventually you will make your choice and you'll say, okay, either I'm going to go to the next level with this, or I'm going to back off. So you're right about that. I mean, that's a very big danger.
When I was confused, like when I tasted Chardonnay, so like 3 times I did and I found totally different. I thought like how to pen it down. For me it's very tough to pen it down, so how should I explain it? Because that was not my profile. That's where I was at.
But I think this whole thing has been driven by the trade very much. I think it's the food and beverage guys in all the hotels, because it was a subject that they studied. It was something that interested them, and so they pursued it. But any time when you try to pass that sort of knowledge or expertise onto a consumer, it's not going to work. Because it was an area of interest for that guy. For him to study and go really deep into it made sense. Yes, exactly. But when you pass that on to people, as consumers, like you rightly said, it becomes overwhelming. And there's so much. I mean, for heaven's sake, there are 6,000 varietals of grapes. Can you imagine that? Do we have time to, but that's the beauty of wines as well, on the other side, the flip side. The more you try, the more there is to try. And that's why it's about an individual. It's a very personality-driven, alcoholic beverage.
Ma'am, do you also target some pastry personalities who don't wine?
We actually consciously stay away from pastry people. The only pastry person that I have come close to getting, and I have got, is Gulpanal, because I launched last year a women's wine club. It's called W3. It's Wine Women Wit, and she's a patron member of this community. But it's not from a pastry perspective. More as she's a wine drinker. She's fairly knowledgeable about it, and she's a goodwill ambassador for us. And she happens to be a friend. But we are not into the pastry because these are all what we call the pocketias. They love to be photographed. It's just about holding, and they will never ever pay for a single bottle of wine because they're so used to getting it for free because everybody spoils them. All the big companies have all the big spends. They spoil them so much that these guys just don't take this seriously. And they refuse to pay for a bottle. They know they'll get it for free. And these are not your real consumers.
And since you are in this business, we would like to know from you, what are different kinds of wine? We always have red wine and white wine. So can you just, elaborate and, brief that what is actually the difference between both of them?
Sure, there are 4 categories as far as wines are concerned. 4 basic categories. First is the sparkling. And sparkling and champagne fall in the same category. Do you want me to write it down or anything?
No, that's fine. I'll put it down.
Okay. Okay. So sparkling and champagne will fall in the.
You also want
Yeah.
Yeah, that is.
No. So there's a sparkling and champagne category. Then there's red, white, and rosé. So typically this is your, the one with the bubbles. So it's the bubbly, right? Then you have the red, obviously from the red or black grapes. Then you have the white, which is from the white grapes, green or white grapes. And then the rosé, which is from the red grapes, but the skin is taken off. Okay, so these are the 4 broad wine categories all over the world. Whether it's traditional style, old world, new world, doesn't matter. Then as you go into specifics, champagne